8 government-funded, supported food storage facilities across the country have about enough food stockpiled to feed about 10 to 15 million people over a 2 or 3 week period of time. That's it. That's what we have in reserve when it comes to food. So one of the conditions that has been made for, say, like FEMA is the ability to buy more food. But if we were to have a grid down situation like I just had in my previous video, then nobody's going to be selling you food. Food is now the commodity. Because if our power grid goes down, essentially our currency has probably just fallen. So money is going to be essentially completely useless overnight. And now it's going to be essentially a barter system. And food is now the absolute main commodity. Back to the way it used to be. It used to be that's what the main commodity was food. You know, you literally had things like salt that used to be currency. Because that's how people stored food. In some cases, you couldn't get through the winter even with the food you had if you didn't have salt to preserve it. So that's what's going to happen if our electrical grid was to go down and you know, money would be useless. There's just no need for it at that point. So now food is the commodity. So I don't know how they're going to be able to buy this food when there's nobody really essentially selling it. So essentially what's going to happen is there's going to have to be some situations where it is commandeered. So there's going to be all kinds of resistance to that, in my opinion. But what if we just simply had a plan? What if we had a plan where these things that we can clearly see are going to happen because of the shortages, what if we just start putting a plan into place? So you can see in the thumbnail of this video, the title is called The Joseph Plan. So Joseph, in scripture, you know, he basically, when he was sold into slavery and ended up in Egypt, working for Potiphar, and then getting sent to jail, and then ended up working for the Pharaoh, number 2 in the country. Because he had a plan to feed people. So that whenever he interpreted the Pharaoh's dream, and he seen plenty for 7 years, and then he seen a famine for 7 years, they started building these massive grain silos. And not only did Joseph save Egypt, but they saved other countries around Egypt as well. So 7 years, think about that. Multiple countries saved for 7 years. Now granted, I would have to imagine that people back then were much more self-sufficient than we are today. But that's still unbelievably impressive. That the food that they stored, first of all, lasted 7 years, still had nutrition, and was still working well in that 7th year before the famine ended and they were able to grow crops again. I don't believe these numbers. I want people to know what is being published. I want people to know what other guys are saying. So when you go on the internet and you're listening to all this fear, even from these big podcasters, it's because they're hearing these numbers and they're believing it. I've literally heard people quoted, you know, that have millions of followers and massive sort of following. I don't understand it. I don't understand with all the research these guys do, with all the research they do, I don't understand why they're not trying to solve the problem. Why they're not bringing people on to say, hey, how would we deal with this issue? Instead of just constantly promoting this fear again and again and again. And this is just, I sound like a broken record here in my videos. But I don't know. I mean, according to the analytics, only 6% of people are watching more than one video. So I'm most of the people, all they're watching is one video. So I don't know if this is the only opportunity I have to appeal to someone. Because you don't know who's going to watch this video and have some ability to reach out to someone and say, hey, why don't we have a food distribution plan, storage and distribution plan for our whole country? Because you know what would change almost any disaster in the United States of America is if every major city had a hub so that we knew that we had enough food to feed the whole country for a year. All of a sudden, the fear is going to start melting away. And this is America. Americans are capable of anything. Well, like I said before, except to get along. That's the only thing it seems to elude you Americans is getting along with each other. But Americans can do pretty much anything. So, is it possible to be able to store enough food to feed every person in this country for a year? Absolutely, it's possible. Anyone that says that it's not possible is just lying, because it really comes down to one basic thing. It's money, right? That's what it always boils down to. Could we make this happen? Yes, of course we can make it happen. It's just, is anyone willing to spend the money to make it happen? Well, at some point we're going to figure out, if people don't have some assurance and they default to fear immediately, there's not going to be anything left. You know, like I said, are those numbers in my previous video and in that chart, you know, that EMP or that grid down chart, you know, with 90% of the population expired after 1 to 2 years? I actually don't even believe that those numbers are real. When I say real, I mean, this is from their projections. I don't mean that they're not real. I mean that they did certain projections and that's what their projections, you know, followed out. I would be surprised if more than 50% of the population was actually passed away. But these are, like, when you say this, it's like in comparison to 90%, it's like, oh, 90%, it's too much, it's an exaggeration, it's only going to be 50%. That's 165 million people. Just let that sink in. That's 165 million people that might expire after just 2 years. This is not acceptable. This is absolutely not acceptable, that if we were to have a grid down scenario, or even just our currency collapsed, I mean, it doesn't have to be just a grid down. It's like there's all kinds of things that could just plunge us into chaos, because it's the fear that's going to hurt us. It's not the lack of resources. It's not that we can't grow more food. It's not that we don't have the ability to come together and form communities and figure out this plan, figure out a way forward. We absolutely do. The problem is we're not going to, because nobody's given us any assurance whatsoever that it doesn't have to be like that. If we were able to get some assurance from somebody that it's like, hey, we can have this Joseph plan, this food storage and distribution plan, and people know that, hey, that's in place. Even if, like with most government things, when you actually come to needing it or using it, it's never as good as what it's supposed to be or what it is on paper. Even if it was one of those scenarios, you're still alleviating this massive fear and anxiety that people have. People who have watched these Hollywood movies where people are literally eating each other. Like, this is the visualization that we have of some catastrophic future. Is like just this completely total collapse of society. What I'm worried about is it being a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's my concern. So anyway, I've got previous videos. I'm kind of a broken record. I keep saying the same thing. You know, I don't get a lot of repeat viewers. I only have 6% of people who are watching essentially more than one video according to analytics. So almost everyone that watches my videos is a new person watching one of my videos. So, and I have no idea if you're ever going to watch another one. According to statistics, you're not. So this might be my one and done for you. But here's what I believe to be the truth. I believe that we can change. I believe we can change this. Currently, we have about 8 facilities. The furthest north is Denver. On the East Coast, it's Maryland. Nothing north of that. As I said at the beginning, we have about enough food in there to feed 10 million people for 3 weeks or 15 million people for about 2 weeks. That's it. So realistically, what's going to happen if we were to have a catastrophic grid failure, everything's down kind of situation? I mean, that food is going to get dispersed. So realistically, what's going to happen is maybe 30 million people will get enough food for 3-4 days. That's more than likely, on a realistic situation, more along the lines of what's probably going to happen. Where's all the extra food go? Great question. The one thing that you can absolutely guarantee and depend on is corruption. And that, so FEMA had been recently, kind of scolded a little bit and told that they need to do a better job because they were extremely undersupplied. So we can almost guarantee that that's going to be the situation. We can almost guarantee that whatever numbers that they're saying that they have, it's more than likely going to be less than that. So imagine we had a program called the Joseph Plan. That's the name I'm giving it. And this program was something that was developed with wealthy people, companies, and government organizations and NGOs, right? So we can have non-profit organizations and getting involved with the government. So one of the things that the government could do that would be really helpful is the government could provide facilities. So the government could provide facilities and manpower through the National Guard or through the military. So that's a big part of it. Now, what a lot of these big, billionaires, we have 912 billionaires in America. We have over 1,000, hundreds of millionaires. And actually, I might be getting that number wrong. It might have been, we had 1.2 million millionaires. Now, a lot of those people, it's money that's tied up in properties, and I'm kind of repeating some stuff in a previous video. But imagine we get a partnership with a lot of people that want to write off things on taxes. A lot of massive organizations that want to write off taxes. What if we made it possible, especially for a company that makes food? What if we were to work out a plan with them and say, hey, we want you to take some of this food that you make, we want you to figure out how to make it for long-term storage, and when you donate X amount of that food, we're going to give you a tax break. So that we fill these supplies with food, alleviating a lot of this fear that Americans have if something was to go wrong, knowing that we have a hub in every major city. That's absolutely what we need. We need to have a hub in every major city. We need to have a hub in every city because it's about distribution. So every single city should have a hub with enough food to feed the people in that city for a year. That should be the goal. So that we're telling everyone in the country, hey, if anything ever happens unbelievably catastrophic, where we're done and we just have to replant, where we have to we've got a year to get focused on how to get ourselves back in the groove again, figuring this stuff out, we've just bought ourselves a year. Now all of a sudden people don't have to have this fear, this anxiety. Like I said, I teach a course called Urban Survival for Christians, and I have people come into my class, and I mean, they have deep anxiety. And these are people who are professing to be Christians. So they're supposed to have hope from God and the Holy Spirit, yet they still come into this class with these deep, profound anxieties about something big happening, and essentially the country just turned itself apart. So if you were to look at the research that's being disseminated through whatever government organizations or whatever organizations that are kind of getting into this, you've got all these guys on the internet and they keep talking about this stuff all the time. Get your food, hide your food, don't tell anybody, be willing to defend your food even if it costs someone else their life. Like this is the mainstream message. This is the mainstream message. And to me, I believe that this mainstream message has the potential to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what it's really promoting is promoting fear. It's promoting fear. And one thing that really gets people motivated to do the wrong thing is fear. It's kind of insane how trying to get a human being to do something and trying to find all kinds of motivation to get them to do something, and they just won't do it, and you introduce fear, And before you even turn to explain it to them, they're already off and running. Fear is a major motivator to get people to do things. The problem is, it's pretty much every single time the wrong thing. That's the problem with fear as a motivator, is it's not going to produce the kind of fruit, it's not going to produce the good works that is needed to fix the problem. So what I'm proposing is that we actually put together these plans. We offer tax breaks. We try to figure out how do we get these long-term storage foods. So one of the I believe it's Maryland is the location that has 10 million MREs that the government has paid maybe a minimum of $12 for. I couldn't find the exact pricing. So you're talking about $120 million for these 10 million MREs. That's one meal for 10 million people. We have 330 million people in the country. So that approximate $120 million was spent to give 10 million people one meal. What if that $120 million could be used to feed 10 million people for a week? But because I believe it's possible. I believe when we're banning bulk and we're banning smart and we're using things. Do you know that there's a certain amount of food every year in this country that's just simply destroyed to maintain commodity prices? So they just destroy it. So much food is just plowed right back into the ground. Imagine we started having some programs where we continued to gather some of this food for just 3, 4, 5 years, figured out how to freeze dry it. I mean, we already know how to freeze dry food, so it's not like we have to figure it out, but we just have to figure it out on a massive scale. But maybe we're getting companies to help us with this. Maybe we're getting volunteers to help us with this. Maybe part of the thing that volunteers, especially people who, you know, are getting food stamps or something along those lines, maybe if they come down and volunteer, they get to take home extra food. So they get a benefit from their voluntary hours. This is not, like, we're not trying to figure out something that we haven't done on large scale before. Like with the whole war effort, like we have figured out crazy things that would have seemed almost insurmountable, like would have almost seemed like impossible to do. So instead of destroying a lot of this food to maintain commodities, maybe we just figure out processes to get all this stuff into freeze dryers and then get it into, you know, governmentally protected and held facilities that is at every major city. And you know, if we get to that point where we need to cycle it out, just make sure we're cycling it out before it gets to a sell-by date so that people can eat it. So we get to keep feeding the hungry. We get to send some overseas to other countries where people are struggling and suffering. Like, these are real things that we could be doing. And I really believe the resources are actually available. What I believe is missing is the organization, the desire, and the money. But you know what? When you have the desire, then you find the money. You find a way to figure it out. So I live in Washington State. We're quite a bit away from Denver, Colorado. So out of the minimal amount of food that's stored in Denver, Colorado, what are the chances that any of that would make it to the Washington State area? I mean, are they going to literally drive past? Are they going to use resources like fuel, like diesel, to take those food supplies and drive past starving people in that area to take it to other people further north? If something has happened to our country and the grid is down, we have limited resources across the board. It just doesn't make sense that they're going to put this stuff on a truck and drive it to a different state when they have people in their own state that need to get fed, when they're worried about using up that diesel because they're not sure how they're going to be able to replenish that diesel. This is something that we need in our government. It's something that we need to get a conversation. We need to get people like Sean Ryan, Joe Rogan, you know, Tucker Carlson, whatever other big podcasters there are out there. There's so many of them. We need to get these guys talking about a plan, not constantly bringing guys on to talk about, you know, how we're, I mean, honestly, you just watch these programs and it's just doomsday stuff. It's just constant doomsday stuff. Almost every person, not every person, but so many of their guests that come on just tell us about how, like, how screwed we are. You know? Like, how much trouble we're in. It's kind of crazy. You know? That we're just this buried into the ground. You know? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that we keep talking about the fear, keep promoting the fear, keep talking about the problems, and don't pursue answers. So this is what I'm calling it, the Joseph Plan. And it would start off with every major city. And then once we've got the major cities covered, now we can start moving into the rural areas. But the truth is, in the rural areas, most of us are a bit more self-sufficient. We have a bit more land. We're closer to the farms. We have a bit more access. So we'll probably do better. You know, in yesterday's, you know, video that I posted, you know, and it had that, I had ChatGPT make up a thumbnail for me, or like a little poster that was based upon the 2015 report, the 2015 grid down, or EMP congressional report. And that's the grid, and that's the poster that it made. So in that poster, it had, after 1 to 2 years, we had 90% of the population gone. 90%. Like, that's insane. You know, I don't understand, with such a looming threat that hangs over our heads, why we're not doing something about it. As far as distribution centers, you know who make excellent volunteers for blessing and helping people and distributing food? Christians. Christian churches. Public schools. Hospitals. Any facility near that produces water. I mean, our infrastructure to do this, it's already in place. The only thing we're really missing is really the food. And when I say infrastructure, we're missing the food, and we're missing the actual storage facilities for the food. But if we're doing this city by city, instead of 8 locations for the whole country, that's insane. Are you telling me that every city can't allocate or self-fund, work out a plan with the local municipalities? It's like, hey, you guys are going to help support this facility, so whatever refrigeration or whatever we need to put in here, like, you guys are going to supply the power for this, because this is what's going to save the city, so that people keep paying their electricity bills. Like, we all have a hand to play in helping each other and saving each other from some kind of catastrophe. Churches do an amazing job of blessing people, loving people, and helping people. And I would say the most important thing that churches do in an emergency, where they're the ones actually helping people and giving out food, you know what they give people that's more important than food and water? They give them hope. When people come to a church to get food, they're also getting to hear about Jesus Christ. They're also getting to hear about how much God loves them. And if they pray to God, He will bless them and get them through this. People need to hear this. They need to hear the gospel message. It's almost pointless to save a body if you don't save their soul. It's pointless to feed them and make them full for a day if you don't fill them with hope. So I keep saying this, you know, I'm new to this. I have a tiny following. You know, even the analytics are saying, like, basically nobody watches, or very few people watch more than one of my videos. This is a message we need to get out. Please share this message. You know, I'm calling it the Joseph Plan. You know, if you want to stick your own name or label on it, you know, whatever you want to put on it, that's great. But we need to get this message out. We need to start reaching people so that everyone in this country knows, if anything was to happen in your region, your city, that the government has enough food to feed everybody there for 1 year. Do not panic. Do not lose control. And by losing that control, it means that food might not get distributed. Start talking to people about how we need to keep community under control so that the food can get out to everybody. Give them that hope. Don't take that hope away from them. Don't let people think this absolute insane scenario where all that we have is enough food to feed 15 million people for 2 weeks. That's insane to me. Absolutely insane. No wonder there's so much fear about all of this stuff going on. But we can kill that fear. We can kill that fear by putting together a plan and letting people know, hey, we're there. Like, we figured this out. We've got it taken care of. If anything was to happen, we've got it covered, and we just bought ourselves a whole year to get our country up and running again. And maybe instead of it being like 90% of our country gone, or what I think could be anywhere between 30 to 50%, but what about if we just brought it down to like 5%? As far as a percentage goes, to say 5%, that's insane. In the United States of America, you're talking somewhere in the region of about like 16, 17 million people still just at 5%. Like, just insane numbers. If we get down to that, actually my numbers are wrong. There's 330 million people in America. No, my numbers are right. Yeah, there's 330 million people, so 10% is 33 million. So 5% is half of that. So you're looking at about roughly 17 million people. Talking about 17 million people in almost a best case scenario. Like, we gotta do something. We gotta do something. We gotta make a difference. We gotta give people hope, and we gotta try to just lower that number. Do everything we can to lower that number. If you know someone that's got a big podcast, please forward this to them. Put it in your own words. Reach out to them. But we need to get this conversation going. We need to get this conversation started. And I believe that there's a really solid plan in order to make this happen, where we can start putting this together and getting food stored away that actually has the potential of changing the outcome. Because right now we don't. Right now, 8 locations, such a small amount of people, it's going to barely make any impact whatsoever. What's going to end up happening is the people who have this food will end up hoarding it. They'll understand, listen, we can give all this, we can give away these 10 million MREs, and 10 million people got one meal. What's that going to do? That's the problem. Is I think people are going to feel as if they're living in fear as well. My hope is Jesus Christ. So whatever happens, I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to feed people. I'm trusting God. It'd be really kind of cool if we just started to do that and think about that as a nation. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment, and please share this with someone that can make a difference.